All right. So our first order of business is to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll say the Pledge of Allegiance today, if you would please join me, not verbally, but yeah, I will just do one person and I'll say it. So I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So with that, I'm going to start with a roll call and introductions. So council members present, when I call your name, just say I'm here. Pam Mortensen. I'm here. Mike Molitor.
I'm here.
John Chamberlain.
I'm here.
Shannon Bruce.
I'm here.
And Allison Fauski, we know you're here. Chris Lindquist.
Here.
Director of Administration, Ali Palfos.
Here.
Public Works Superintendent, Gary Peters. Did we lose Gary?
I am here.
Okay. City Administrator, Mike Baroni.
I am here.
Finance Director, Brian Grimm.
I'm here.
Community Development Director, David Abel.
I am here.
Attorney, Ron Beatty.
Here.
Chief of Police, Paul Falls.
I am here.
And I'm Lisa Whalen, the mayor. I'm here. I believe we have, do we have one or two do we have Adam Gabois with WSB with us this evening? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Adam is in attendance. I believe right now he's muted.
Okay, but he is available for questions or comments, to answer questions. All right, and then I believe we also have two individuals from Clifton Larson Allen. They are maybe muted at this time.
Actually, I'm unmuted. This is Dennis Fogeveen, and there's three of us from Clifton Larson Allen tonight.
All right. Well, when you do your presentation, just identify yourselves again. We'd appreciate that for the record. So that concludes our roll call. Anybody that I missed? I don't believe so. So is next item on the agenda is approval of our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
This is Pam, and
okay, Pam, go ahead.
So moved.
Okay, Pam made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Shannon.
Okay, I think that was Ms. Bruce. So Ms. Mortensen made that motion. Ms. Bruce seconded. All those in favor signify with aye. How do you vote, Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor?
Yes.
Mr. Trumperlin?
Yes.
Ms. Mortensen?
Yes.
And I vote yes, motion passes. So we'll move on to our special presentations. Our first special presentation is our financial audit. Mr. Grimm, do you want to start us out and then hand it over to our special guests?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So this is probably the bulk of the council packet. It starts on page 3 with the memo, and I think as far as the general fund results, I think we had brought that information, at least the preliminary results, back in, I believe, a February meeting. So none of that's probably a surprise as far as that our revenues, especially our building permit revenues, came in better than we projected. That our general fund expenditures came in, pretty close, actually slightly under than what we had budgeted. So I think I would mainly just turn it over to, we have 3 speakers, as Mr. Hugaveen with Clifton Larson Allen referenced earlier. We'll have Dennis Hugaveen, Lucas Chase, and Jack Stearns from our auditing firm will present the summary results, which start on page 5 of your packet. The PowerPoint that they're presenting was obviously included as part of the packet. So I'll probably turn it over to Dennis to start the presentation from our auditors.
Thanks, Brian. This is Dennis Hugaveen. As Brian indicated, I have unmuted, and I've asked, I'm going to ask Lucas and Jack to unmute as well. First, want to start off by thanking Brian and Brian Grimm and all of his finance team at the city for all the excellent work that they put into the work every year for the audit. Of course, I say it every year, but I know you'd be astounded by the amount of effort that it takes to pull together the information for the CAFR The city holds itself to a higher standard than it would need to by putting together a comprehensive annual financial report. It qualified for the GFOA Certificate of Excellence last year, and we fully expect it'll continue to qualify for the award for its 2019 submission. It really does indicate that you're holding yourself as a city to a higher standard of financial reporting, and we do appreciate that, and I think the public should as well. Most of the field work was done before all of the COVID quarantining and things was done, but a lot of extra effort went into the subsequent work that had to be done while under quarantine. So we appreciate all that extra effort, of course. Appreciate all the effort of Mike Brony and Brian Grimm with the exit conference had to be done in a virtual environment. And certainly as council with this meeting, we appreciate your flexibility in terms of doing it in a virtual environment as well. So I'm thinking with the environment that we're in with the muting and unmuting and things like that, it might work best if we just plow through the PowerPoint that we put together and then kind of stand for your questions at the end, if you don't mind. Unless you've been having good success with doing questions as presentations move along, I guess we can try it that way too if you've been successful in doing it in that manner. But otherwise, without guidance to the contrary, I guess we'll just kind of plow through and wait for questions at the end. I have asked Lucas Chase as the manager on the engagement to walk us through the audit results. There's a lot of different reports that go into an annual audit. You have all of the PDFs, I believe, that have been made part of the packet. Of course, the foremost report that we're giving you tonight is the actual audit results of the CAFR, and he'll walk through those results with you. And then Jack is going to chime in. He's the senior on the audit. It's really his first time out of the starting gate giving audit results to a city council as an audit senior. So we appreciate your willingness to let him participate in our audit results meeting tonight. So thank you for that. And I guess with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucas and let him start our PowerPoint presentation. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. So this is starting on page, yep, go ahead. Somebody else has something to say? Otherwise, it's starting on page 5 of your council packet is the PowerPoint slide. And I'm going to move right on to page 6, or the second page of our PowerPoint, which is the agenda. This we'll be going through required communications, audit results, financial results, and other items. So then on our third slide, this is our required communications, which basically summarizes what's in your governance letter, which is way towards the end of your council pack, at least the part that we're provided. So it'd be pages 166 through 169 if you wanted to reference that. It's a ways down, so if you wanted to stay on this slide, I'm going to summarize everything that's in that letter. First off, our audit provides reasonable but not absolute assurance. Although we obviously look at a lot, and Brian will tell you that. We do apply materialities, and we do a risk-based audit, but we look at anything that's material or that has significant or fraud risk. Also, we point out that there's some significant estimates that management helps develop, and then we look at the accuracy and reasonableness of those and make sure they're consistent from year to year. And we didn't see any issues with those. Some of the major ones are useful lives of capital assets that affect your depreciation expense, the valuation of your investments, which for you it's pretty simple. You mark to the fair market value on your 1231 statements, because you have pretty simple investments for the most part. Your post-employment benefits, which are based on actuarial results and how you allocate those among your funds, because you have business-type funds and your government activities. And then your net pension liability and related deferred outflows and inflows similarly are based off from PARA's actuarial report and how you allocate those. This year, there was a new accounting policy implemented. It's a GASB 84 related to fiduciary activities. And this basically moved your land use agency fund from being reported as an agency fund to now a special revenue governmental fund. And since most of those transactions are break even or basically balance sheet only, it didn't have any restatement because of this or any fund balance effect. It's just basically reclassification of where it was reported in the financial statements. And as Dennis noted earlier, we received the full cooperation of management. If something was going awry earlier, obviously we'd reach out to the members of council and governance, but we, of course, received great cooperation and everything went very well. Also, I didn't put a bullet in here for this, but there was one immaterial, we call it uncorrected misstatement, but it was just corrected through current year activity instead of restating for an immaterial prior period issue related to the Kings Point Road debt and capital assets. Basically, it was about $57,000 of net effect on a net position in government activities that should have been allocated across the water fund and sewer fund for related infrastructure and debt. That was just transferred this year for that debt in infrastructure. So I'm going to move on to the next slide titled Audit Results. So the first bullet there, we provide an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. So this is the best opinion we can provide. And you can see this in our audit opinion letter, which is on pages 41 through 43 of the council packet if you want to read through that later. We also do provide an internal control letter, or sometimes called a yellow book letter, because you do have a yellow book audit. This letter starts on page 163 of your council packet. And I do want to let you know that we consider the controls and review the design of controls over the significant audit areas to help determine our audit procedures and our financials for our financial statement audit. And we'd report any deficiencies that were noted there, and nothing was noted. We would report any issues if we found any, but because it's just looking over significant audit areas, we actually do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of controls. We review the design of the controls. And then finally, we provide a letter on municipal legal compliance, and there's no findings there, which is great. If you want to read through that, it's just a quick letter on page 165 of your council packet. And that audit letter is based off from the Office of State Auditor's Audit Guide. It's a 7-part guide with, I think it's 35 pages long, and we went through that entire thing, and there are no issues noted, so that was great to see. Go to the next slide. Now we're kind of getting into some financial results. So this slide is on general fund unassigned fund balance and looking at that as a percent of the general fund's expenditures. So as of the end of 2019, just your unassigned fund balance, so we're backing out the non-spendable amounts, any restricted amounts or committed or assigned. Just the unassigned amounts are sitting at 52% of general fund's expenditures. So that's right in line with the city's policies and even a little above the Office of State Auditors, or right around the Office of State Auditors guidelines. So you're right in where you want to be. And you're pretty consistent with the previous 3 years as well. So you had 56% in 2016, 54% in 2017, and 48% in 2018. So you had just a slight increase from 48% to 52% between 2018 and 2019. And most of that is due to budgeting kind of closer to a net zero budget. So you now have, and there's kind of a bullet on this on the bottom of the screen too to kind of explain what I'm going to say here, but there's an assigned amount of $163,000 for subsequent years budgeted deficits. So you're budgeted to spend down a little in 2020. And if you include that, you actually go up to 55% of expenditures. And that's lower than your prior year amount, which is $397,000. So you kind of have a jump there just because of having an assigned amount versus the unassigned amount. And also you did have some increase in fund balance just because you did better than originally budgeted. You know, you budgeted for that $397,000 spend down of fund balance, and actually you ended up at about $39,000. So that was great to see. So on the next slide, I'm going to pass it over to Jack to talk about some more financial results, starting with the general fund revenue.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Hi, everyone. This is Jack Stearns. Starting off on page 10 of the PDF, we're going to first off by talking about general fund revenues. Property taxes made up about 65% of revenue sources in 2019. This stayed consistent with last year, hovering right around $3.2 million, which is consistent with the certified tax levy for 2019. Next up, 19% of revenue sources in 2019 related to license and permits. Brian kind of talked about this earlier, but this was due to just an increase in building permits during the year. Intergovernmental revenues made up 3.5%, and this was a slight decrease from last year, but it stayed relatively consistent. And then other user fees and other revenues made up about 12% of total revenues. And again, this stayed fairly consistent with prior year with nothing major to note there. On slide 11, this is general fund expenditures. General fund expenditures stayed consistent with prior year, sitting around 1.08 million. As for public works, public safety, parks, and other expenditures, all of these stayed consistent with last year, and no major changes there either. Overall, general fund expenditures were 52,000 under budget. General government had expenditures under budget in the amount of 39K. Parks ended the year under budget by around 19,000, and miscellaneous expenditures ended the year under budget by about 15,000. The under budget amounts were slightly offset by public safety being over budget by around $5,000 and public works being over budget at year end by $16,000. Moving on to page 12 of the PDF, this is a comparison of revenue expenditures and the unassigned fund balance. Both general fund revenues and expenditures are both sitting around that $4.9 million. Revenues sitting slightly less at 4.91 million and expenditures around 4.95 million, but still very consistent between revenues and expenditures. Unassigned fund balance also saw an increase from 2018 by around $195,000, and unassigned fund balance made up around 52% of general fund expenditures at year end for 2019. So slide 13 here is on the enterprise funds, more specifically just the unrestricted position. Water unrestricted decreased from 2.4 million to 1.9 million, and this makes up about 112% of operating expenses. So there's plenty of reserves there for future capital projects or significant repairs or any economic downturns that may affect the future. There's also a total net decrease in net position of $71,000. And this includes contributions from developers of $225,000, which did not affect unrestricted net position as it became part of that net investment in capital assets instead. Similar with the sewer increased from 1.7 to 2 million. This makes up 173% of operating expenses. So similar to water, there's those reserves there for future capital projects or repairs or any downturns in the future. Total net increase in net position was around 319K, and this includes the capital contributions from developers of 330.3K, which again, similar to the water fund, did not affect unrestricted net position as it became part of that net investment in capital assets. Finally on the slide is the stormwater, which increased from 471K to 615K, and this made up 154% of operating expenses. So similar to both the water and sewer, there are those reserves there. The total net increase in that position was around 319K, and this includes capital contributions from developers of 142K, which was also sitting in that net investment in capital assets instead of unrestricted net position. All three had operating losses in 2019, but had significantly positive cash flows from operations. This means just no cash items are causing losses like depreciation, OPEB, and pensions, but City is covering a significant portion of depreciation from operating revenues. Next up on slide 14, we're just going to be talking specifically about the water fund. For the water fund, both revenues and expenditures saw an increase in 2019, with revenues increasing just over 1.2 million and expenditures just passing 1.6. The two lines on the graph there, the green one is indicating operating income, and then the purple is income before depreciation. Overall, revenues for the year sat at about 1.2, like I said, and expenditures are sitting around 1.7. This caused an operating loss of about $465K, which is a decrease from prior year, which was around $335K. But if we look at the purple line, this is just showing that if we don't include depreciation of about $860K, operating income would be at a positive $395K. Next up on page 15, this is specific for the sewer fund. Overall revenues for the year sat at about $1 million, while expenditures are sitting around $1.14 million. This caused an operating loss of about $90K, which was a decrease from prior year, which was around $124K. The purple line is showing that if we don't include depreciation of about $352K into the mix, operating income would be sitting at $261K, which was an increase from last year. And finally here, 16 is the Stormwater Fund graph. So for overall revenues for Stormwater sat about $336K, and expenditures are sitting around $398K. And this caused an operating loss of about $62,000, which was a decrease from prior year, while prior year operating loss being around $7,000. The purple line is showing that if we don't include that depreciation again, about $190K into the mix there, it would be sitting at about $128K positive for income before depreciation. So next up, I'm just going to turn it back to Lucas Chase to wrap up the presentation here.
Thanks, Jack. So this slide on page 17 of your packet now looks at your future debt service. So we're looking 4 years out plus the current year, so a 5-year slide here. So your future years are going to be, for the next 4 years, going to be pretty consistent, around 1.7 million to 1.9 million of total debt service. 2019, you can see was quite a bit higher than that, but most of that was due to paying off debt early from prepaid special assessments that had either been collected in prior years or the current year. So it was already from cash and reserve sitting there to then lower down your debt service payments in the future and then save the interest over time. In part of that, just to kind of point it out, so 880,000 of that prepayments were related to 2010 bonds. There's about 2.6 million for the 2017 B roundabout bonds, about 1,475,000 for the 2017 C Kings Point bonds, and then so that's a total of about 4.9 million paid off from all those prepaid specials. So that was great to see. So you can see your total debt, if you figure all that in, decreased. If you include refundings, is actually about 8,192,000. If you back out a refunding you had, it was 6,832,000 of debt paid. And since I mentioned that refunding, there was a refunding within the 2019 A bonds of the 2010 or the 2010 A bonds, and that helped in future debt service. That'll save the city in just gross cash flows of about $87,000, and then if we present value that, they'll save the city about $78,500 in debt service expenditures through interest. So moving on to the next slide, we kind of get into some comparisons using some reports we get from the Office of State Auditor, and of course this is all prior year, so we're looking at 2018 reports just to kind of look at some pure cities here. So on page 18, we're looking at your taxes per capita. So using 2018 information from the Office of State Auditor, you can see that Minnetrista is pretty comparable with your nearby comparable cities, right in the mix at $566 per capita. And then we kind of have a similar slide on the expenditure side on page 19 of the packet. We're looking at the current expenditures. So Minnetrista is sitting at $664 per capita, and you can see the various other neighboring cities and peer cities listed there with 2018 information. Of course, it ranges greatly based off from, kind of management and council and the needs of the cities. But you can see you're about right in the middle of the mix there. And then on page 20 of the packet, or our 16th slide, just go over some other items here. So I mentioned earlier we implemented GASB 84 already, and then coming up, and this was actually extended 1 year, would have been due in 2020, but the GASB extended it due to COVID-19. So now at the end of 2021, there'll be the new leases standard, or GASB 87, that will be implemented. And basically that just means any lease now that's over 1 year, or 1 year or more actually, will become what used to be called a capital lease. So basically most leases are going to be some sort of financing instrument where in your government-wide statements and then in your business type funds, you're going to have a capital asset and long-term debt. And then depending on timing of things, you can also end up with some deferred inflows and outflows now because of this new lease standard. So I know management's compiling lists of things here, but note this can be on the expense side and revenue side. So you can have, long-term leases receivable and a related deferred inflow for things like antenna leases and things like that too, not just leasing of vehicles or whatever. And then as Dennis mentioned earlier, we did want to point out you got your GFOA Certificate of Achievement of Excellence for financial reporting for completing the CAFR successfully for 2018, and we plan on submitting or your management plans on submitting your CAFR for 2019 as well. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions and just say thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hogeveen. Council, do you have any questions? Anyone? Okay. Thank you for that report and for the presentation. With that, the council does need to receive and accept the 2019 financial audit. Is there a motion to accept and receive the 2019 financial audit?
Pardon me, Madam Mayor. This is Shannon. I was muted and I was trying to say I had a question before, and I
okay.
just unmuted myself.
All right, go ahead.
The question is on page 17 under the future debt services, future debt service. When I'm looking at 2020 projected and on out, are you on that slide?
Yep.
I'm just, those numbers, even though we have the water tower debt, that wasn't projected for 2020, so that would be 4 million.
Right. So that was. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I think that was issued after year end, and I think we do have a subsequent event note in there. So this is as of debt issued as of 12/31. But it's a good question though. But yeah, so this is as of 12/31 debt that was issued by the city.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't included in there.
Nope. Oh, yeah, it's not.
Thank you.
All right. And any other questions? All right. With that, then, is there a motion then to receive and accept the 2019 audit?
This is Council. I will second.
Okay, who made the motion?
Ms. Bruce.
Okay, I was getting feedback. So, all right. So Ms. Bruce made that motion and Mr. Chamberlain seconded that. So we'll go down the line here. Pam, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mike Molitor?
Yes.
John Chamberlain?
Yes.
Shannon Bruce?
Yes.
Lisa Whalen, yes. So the motion passes 5-0. Again, thank you to Lucas, Jack, and Dennis for participating and doing your presentation. Thank you very much. And also, thank you to Brian and your staff and people that helped put this together. And again, congratulations for a job well done. And we're looking forward to that next CAFR award. So with that, we'll move on to our second item in special presentations. It's designating Thursday, May 28th as District 110 School Appreciation Day. Mr. Barone, do you want to take this or do you want me to?
Mayor, if you would like to go ahead and read the proclamation, you certainly can.
Okay, I'd have to get to that page. Hold on just a second. If you have it up, Mike, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so requested by the school board, particularly Mr. Mike Bullis, who's on the school board, was just trying to recognize the fact that Waconia School District, serving their approximately 4,000 students, for the last 10 weeks has been doing all their stuff remotely, just like every other school district, but he just wanted to give some appreciation to the teachers and staff. So that's the reason that they asked our city to provide this resolution proclaiming Thursday, May 28th, which is their last day of school, as District 110 School Appreciation Day. And so if the council is in favor of that, I will ask the mayor to take a vote on that. It's on page 170 of your city council packet.
Okay, does anybody have any questions regarding this declaration? All right, if none, is there a motion then to declare May 28th as District 110 School Appreciation Day?
So moved. This is Pam.
All right, Pam has made that motion. Is there a second?
This is Shannon.
Okay,
I'll second.
All right, thank you. All right, so Ms. Mortensen made that motion and Ms. Bruce seconded. All those in favor signify with aye. Pam, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mike Molitor,
Yes.
John Chumperland,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
and Lisa Whalen, yes. So motion passes 5-0. So that concludes our special presentations, and so we will move on to our persons to be heard. I believe we have several letters that are going to be read into the record. One we have from Mr. Notch regarding an issue that he has with a neighboring property. And Mr. Barone, do you have some letters that you are, or emails that you are going to be reading?
I do, Mayor. Would you like me to?
All right. Well, yeah, sure. Go ahead if you'd like with yours.
So the background on this is on Thursday evening of last week, city staff posted an item on Facebook encouraging voters to consider voting by absentee ballot. And we got an email from Councilmember Bruce objecting to that. And so we took down the email, understandably. And over the weekend, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I received one email each of those 3 days. And as per our COVID-19 related persons to be heard, they were interested in having their thoughts aired on during the council meeting during this section of the agenda. So I will do that now. So the first one I will read is from Miss Cindy Notch on 1250 Morningview Drive. And she addresses the email, which I sent to all the council members. So I'm just reading this for the benefit of the record. So, dear City Administrator Barone, Minnetrista Mayor, and Minnetrista council persons, thank you for your time and service. In my opinion, the City of Minnetrista has no business encouraging voting by mail, as it essentially discourages voting in person. From my decades of service as an election judge, I am not one bit more concerned about voting in person or manning polling stations than I am of going to the grocery store or Menards. Federal elections only come around every 4 years, and the 15 minutes I spend voting in person is extremely important to me. My family heritage expects nothing less, which is why I serve as an election judge. Polling place might look a bit different or need to be relocated to a larger spaces, but I am confident we can spread out and achieve safe social distancing voting in person. I'm proud to go on record to defend, protect, and encourage free and accurate in-person voting. And signed, Cindy Notch. My second one, and Ms. Notch emailed me on Friday. On Saturday, received a email from former council member Bob Christians, and his comments were as follows. He says, I see that there was a Facebook post encouraging everyone to vote absentee by mail instead of in person on election day. I understand the need for absentee and or mail-in ballots for residents who may be compromised and or out of the city on election day. However, I don't believe we should encourage it. I'm concerned about potential voter fraud and how that could be controlled. As you all know, when traveling using our airlines for our protection, everyone must show a picture ID before boarding a plane. It is our responsibility to make sure the voting is accurate and to encourage persons to vote in person. Thank you. And it's signed Bob Christians of 6440 Cedar Court. And then the final email I received is from Ann McGregor. She writes, hi, Mike, I want to add the comments made against absentee voting for all in Minnetrista for the November 2020 election. We, Bill Ham and Ann McGregor, feel that absentee voting allows and encourages the potential for fraudulent voting unless each and every name is vetted. I doubt that a vetting process will be in place for this coming election in November. Thank you for taking these comments. Signed, Ann McGregor. I don't have an address, but she did leave her email and her telephone number. So those are the 3 emails I did receive on that topic, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So as you know, we typically don't take action on under persons to be heard. Ironically, last week on Wednesday, I had a conversation with Mr. Baroni, and I said there are some things that the city is going to have to, the city council is going to have to discuss regarding the voting and the process and so on. And I asked that this be placed on our regular council meeting agenda for June 1st. And so if the council is agreeable to that, we'll put that on our agenda. We'll talk about the city's position. We'll talk about the different rules and laws that have come out regarding voting, regarding absentee voting, regarding mail-in ballots, and all of that at our regular council meeting on June 1st. Is that agreeable to the council? You can just kind of give me a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Mike and Pam?
Yes.
And Mr.
Yes.
Chamberlain? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll move that to our June 1st regular council meeting. Then we had another email, and this is from Mr. Notch, from Tom and Cindy Notch. And I'll read this one. Again, we're not going to take any action, just kind of for clarification and background. Our planning department, Nicholas Olson and David Abel, have been working with the property owner. Maybe I'll read this first so you kind of know what's going on here. Says, we are pleading for relief from the surface water flooding caused by topography changes of the recently completed new residence at 1260 Morningview Drive. Tom and Cindy Notch live at 1250 Morningview Drive. So this is their neighbor. For 11 months and again today, we continue to be flooded by surface water runoff from 1260 Morningview Drive onto our property at 1250 Morningview Drive, which then flows down our property as well as across our property and onto 1240 Morningview property. This muddy surface water is plugging swales that have been maintained and successfully by us for years. The new home built at 1260 Morningview had roughly 375 cubic yards of fill brought in during construction. A fill permit was never applied for and obviously not approved as the Minnetrista City Code dictates in 415.01, Subdivision 1 and 2, Paragraph C. Furthermore, the excess fill is obviously not in conformance with the city-approved site plan for 1260 Morningview. On June 28, 2019, Nicholas Olson told McDonald Construction that the final grade requirements would need to be met, and they, the McDonald Construction Company, understood that. In other words, the promised excess 350 cubic feet of fill would be removed. On June 28, 2019, Minnetrista planner Nicholas Olson stated the excess fill would be removed. The excess fill is still on site. Excessive swales have not been installed. Effective swales have not been installed, and silt fences continue to be breached by surface water runoff in many places along the common property line. We remind you of Minnetrista Code 400.03, Subdivision 3, denial of a permit for effect on drainage No building permit will be issued where the relative elevations of the proposed building grade and the established road grade will conflict in such manner as to cause damage by altering the drainage or flow of surface waters to the road or nearby roads or to the adjacent or nearby premises. Clearly, a building permit was issued, which means the property needs to keep the flow of surface water from drainage onto adjacent premises. In addition, leaving roughly 375 cubic yards of additional fill on site does not conform to Minnetrista City Code 415, and he quotes the number, disturbance of an area of less than 5,000 square feet and involves the fill, grading, excavation, or storing of less than 50 cubic yards of soil or earth material. In other words, if you need to store more than 50 cubic yards, you need a fill permit, which was never done. If Minnetrista City Code is enforced, the problem is solved. If City Code is not enforced, you regretfully force citizens to seek legal relief, which increases everybody's costs and causes needless friction between neighbors and citizens. We plead for relief. Thank you for your service and for your time, Tom and Cindy Notch. So this will not only was read into the record, but it will also be part of the record because it was an email given to the city council. The other thing I will say with this is I know city staff has been working on this and they will continue to work on it, and they will be talking with the property owner at 1260 and informing them of the silt fencing and the runoff. And they've also, the residents at 1260 have applied for a deck permit. The city has denied them their deck permit until they get the grading. I'm not sure if it's completed or if they get the grading plan submitted to the city. What I would recommend that we do at this time is allow staff to continue to work with the residents and highly recommend or somehow force them to comply, and then bring this back for a full report to the city council meeting on June 1st. David, do you have anything else you would wish to add to that?
Not really, Madam Mayor. I don't. I guess just for clarification, we have asked for an updated grading plan. It's our understanding that a surveyor has been out and resurveyed the property. They are working with the contractor to come up with a grading plan that does not get reviewed by myself or Nick. We do rely on the engineers when it comes to grading and drainage. So some of the things in the email there in terms of Nick approving or not approving are completely accurate. Just wanted to point out we're mostly the person in the middle doing a lot of the communicating. Mr. Notch is directly communicating with Nick, and that's probably why he's mentioning Nick's name a lot throughout that email. But nonetheless, a lot of this hasn't been done yet. They haven't done final grade. And the homeowner has indicated some deviations from the original plan. And so once we found that out, we've asked them to submit a revised plan for review by the city engineer. And we have yet to have received that plan yet. Once we do, that will be reviewed by the city engineer, and we can update the council as such and on where things stand and where they go from them. But again, the project is not complete. They have not done final grade, nor have they submitted an updated plan. And of course, unfortunately, we had this large rainfall here recently, which, as you can see from the pictures in that email, probably made the situation just unfortunate given the timing of everything with that occurred over the weekend. So still more to come with this. We're well aware of it, have been working with all parties for the last year on the matter.
Okay, and will you maybe notify the contractor or homeowner about the silt fencing and the runoff, and that they need to make sure that their runoff stays on their property?
I already have, Madam Mayor and Council.
Okay.
Yes, as soon as the pictures came in today, we also made them aware of the situation that they need to take care of that.
All right, thank you very much. All right, does council have any other questions? All right, so
Madam
we'll
Mayor?
move on then. Yep.
Madam Mayor, this is Shannon. I have a question. My understanding was that at one point in these discussions that there was some request made of the Notches to actually pay for engineering fees and attorney's fees to enforce this, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't sound like that's the case now. I would certainly hope that the city would take care of this and deal with the homeowner and make sure that they do the right thing without charging the notches to make sure that they do that.
Mr. Abel?
I'm sorry, I just lost everybody cut out there, but I think I heard her talking about the administrative appeal that the notches tried to make.
Yes, because this wasn't getting resolved and they appealed it, and they were told that they were going to have to pay attorney's fees and engineering fees to get it done.
Well,
and I think that's what
they submitted a letter appealing a decision that they say was made by Nick Olson. And again, as I explained, the situation hasn't been completed yet. So I guess technically there's a question of what is there even to appeal. And so once we received the letter, and if he wanted to follow through this, the letter that you see in your packet is different from the letter that was submitted last week by Mr. Notch, where he was specifically calling out city code, appealing the decision of the zoning administrator. We followed up and said, if you want to complete that application, that the proper procedure per city code is to submit a general land use application, submit the fee per our fee schedule, as well as the $1,500 deposit. So we have not heard back from Mr. Notch regarding that appeal. If he wants to fulfill his appeal, he would need to submit the fee and follow through, and that would then bring this decision to the Board of Adjustments, which is the Planning Commission. This is different. This is not talking about an appeal. This is a person's to be heard. This is a different than the appeal, again, which is not complete at this time because they have not filled out the application or paid the fee. And again, that's per city code and the city's fee schedule.
So my question is, are they going to be required to pay a fee to resolve this?
Depending upon what result they're looking for, potentially, yes. We still do not know what the property owners at 1260 are going to do. We don't know how they're going to grade it for sure. We have not received an updated grading plan from them. So I can't fully answer that question at this point because we're not to that point yet.
Because it doesn't seem to make sense to me that they would have to pay to have the city's ordinances enforced and for the planning department to do what they should have done in the first place. So I'm fine with letting this go to the staff and work it out. And I hope we can work it out amicably with the Notches without charging them for something that they shouldn't have to pay for.
Okay, first of all,
there's different sections of city code that are being referenced. Deviations to the grading plans are allowed, and that's back to, again, we haven't received that updated plan, and that needs to get reviewed by the city engineer. So there's a little more to the story about whether or not city code is being met or not, and that, again, has not been determined yet.
And let me interject here. And that's one of the things that I think staff could bring back to our June 1st meeting and update us on, one, the status, as well as the code and how it pertains to this situation. And then maybe by that time, hopefully, we'll have an upgraded grading plan. The grading plan that they submit as their final grading plan has to meet code. And I think that's what David is saying, is they haven't done that yet. And staff is trying to force them to do that. So this will come back for an update and an informational issue at our June meeting. Staff will let us know what's going on. They'll tell us whether or not there's a grading plan, an approved grading plan in place. They'll also tell us if they're meeting all the codes. And hopefully by then, we'll also have a good idea about when the grading will actually take place. Maybe it'll take place between now and then as well. Let's hope so. All right? So I think at this time, we're not asking the Notches to pay for anything unless they would like to prematurely pursue the avenue that David laid out.
And
David,
that's fine.
this is Pam.
Okay,
I have
Pam?
a question to David. When you suggested or asked for an updated grading plan, do you put a date on when you'd like to have it by?
No, Madam Mayor and Council, we really don't. We don't have a mechanism or a code that would require a time frame for something like that. They have a temporary certificate of occupancy, which does have a deadline, if you will, when that temporary certificate will expire. In this case, they're living in the house. The house is completely done. It's just the final grade that in landscaping that needs to happen with the property. And then, like the mayor said earlier, they did apply for a deck permit. We didn't technically deny the permit. We just told them we're not going to process that permit. We're not going to review that permit until which time you get us an updated grading plan and get the grading figured out for the site. So we made them aware of that to help try to move the situation along and get them to get that updated survey. Like I said, the surveyor was out there Friday and today. They've done all their survey work. Now it's just between the excavator and the contractor coming up with the plan, if you will, to be submitted for review.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So that concludes our persons to be heard. So we'll move on to our consent agenda item. Are there any items you wish to remove? Otherwise, they consist of consent agenda item A, approve our work session meeting minutes from May 4th. B, approve our regular meeting minutes from May 4th. C is a resolution to approve claims. And D, approve a second home agreement for Roman Marjama and Jessica Phillip at 395 County Road 110 North. Are there any that you wish to remove?
This is Shannon. I'd like to remove item B, the regular meeting minutes.
Okay. Anybody else want to remove anything? Hearing none, then that remains consent agenda item A, C, and D. Is there a motion to approve those consent agenda items?
Chumperland, so moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Pam. I'll second it.
Okay. So Mr. Trumperlin made that motion and Ms. Mortensen seconded that. All those in favor signify with aye. Pam?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Ma, let me ask you this. Are there any objections? Any nays? All right. Motion passes 5-0. So we'll move on to item number B. It's the regular meeting minutes. Ms. Bruce?
Thank you. On page 178, under the council emergency order, where it says Bruce commented that the council has been operating under the emergency order since the second meeting in March, period. You can just add, the reason I brought that up, just add and question the need for it to stay in place.
I'm sorry, say that again. You're breaking up.
Just add to the end of that sentence and questioned the need for it to stay in place.
Okay, anybody have comments on that? Are you okay with that?
I'd like Chris to go back and just listen to that again, because I don't remember that conversation as that. So if you could just have Chris double check it, then I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I can do that.
Okay. All right. We'll double check that and bring that back at our June 1st meeting. All right. Then we'll move on to our public hearings. This is our street improvement project assessment hearing for 2020. And we will be adopting. So first, I have to open the public hearing. And if anybody is listening or participating and wishes to address the council regarding the special assessments, I'll open the public hearing. I believe we had some individuals that were participating that wanted to speak. There is one issue, and I don't know if I should do this before or after, but there is a gentleman on, I believe it's Lakeside View, that would like to have curbing, concrete curbing versus the asphalt curbing. And maybe before we go to the public hearing, I'll have Allison or Adam, whichever one is available, to kind of weigh in and let us know what the situation is and what this gentleman is requesting. Allison?
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
I'm here as well, Allison.
Okay, Adam.
Okay, maybe Adam, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So I believe what you're referring to is a gentleman that lives on Lakeview that had requested to whether or not the city could look at putting concrete curbing in front of his house if he could pay a separate amount for that curbing. And I'll just give some background information. Obviously, this project's been in the works for a long time. And at one point during the planning stages, concrete curbing was discussed throughout the neighborhood. And some prices were looked at, and council and members of the neighborhood, or benefiting property owners there that were in attendance at those meetings, decided to go with a bituminous curb for the most part, due to its lower cost and less assessment for the residents and less cost for the city, but still provide a solution that's going to manage surface water and help the newly paved streets perform better and drain that water to the storm sewer system. So that's kind of a background, but we did meet with this gentleman on site. Concrete curb is a bid item as part of the contract, so we have a unit price for it as the city with our contractor for the contract, and those units can be added in, or they could be increased and they can be decreased in a project. So there is the potential to add curb to the project, and we do have a relatively certain price per linear foot, which is a standard way to pay for concrete curb and gutter in the contract. So it is possible to do within the contract. And if you had more specific questions, I can answer those as well.
So Adam, this gentleman was saying he would like to pay for the concrete curbing all along his property, and he would be willing to pay for that. And then are there additional engineering costs that would be associated with that change?
There would be some engineering costs, basically modifying the construction plan set to show that work. It's kind of like issuing a change order and providing that revised sheet to the contractor and their subcontractor. They'll have a subcontractor come in and do the curb. So just a small amount of engineering to look at the elevations. That curb has a different profile or detail, if you will, so it looks slightly different in the field, and we'd want to make sure that we're not adversely impacting the boulevard yard area by adding curb. It would be minimal. And then, yeah, the cost, they had indicated they were curious what the cost would be approximately. They didn't indicate if they'd prefer to pay that up front or if they were requesting to roll it into the assessment.
Okay, it'd be somewhat difficult to roll it into the assessment at this point. So, okay, I don't know if that gentleman is here this evening. Is there?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
An option could be, and we've had one caller call in since the beginning of the meeting. So by my notes, I had 3 folks that were here for the public hearing, with a couple of them indicating they were here to listen. Madam Mayor, if you'd like, I can go ahead and unmute the callers so that we can open it up for that question if you'd like.
I think there was only one gentleman or one person that said with the last three digits, 900, that said that he was here regarding the public hearing and didn't indicate that he was here just to listen. Maybe that would be the way to at least start. Ask if that's the gentleman that's here. I believe the gentleman's name is Brian Asmussen. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Let's start with that first, and if that's the gentleman, then we can have him speak briefly. And if not, maybe the caller that came in after the fact, maybe that caller would be the individual. So let's start with 900 first.
Certainly,
Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but are we opening the public hearing?
Yeah, you need to open.
I want to talk with this gentleman first. I guess I can open the public hearing. It doesn't really matter. He can speak during the public hearing as well. I guess I wanted the council to be aware of what this gentleman's request had been. So, okay, I'll open the public hearing. So anybody that wishes to speak to the council regarding the assessment, or I'll say a portion of or a part of the project, may do so at this time. So we'll start with number 900.
Hello, everyone. This is Brian Osmondson. I'd like to thank Adam and Allison, first of all, for coming out and reviewing this matter with myself and Penny.
Thank you. Mr. Osmondson, what we need for the record is simply also your address, please.
Sure. It's 5860 Lakeview Drive.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So, again, I'd like to just thank Adam as well as Allison for coming out and reviewing the plans and talking about the curb and gutter and everything with Penny and myself. And, at this point in time, I think, what we were really interested to know is A, would it be possible to do this? And B, what the approximate cost would be. And so they were very helpful on providing us with that information. I think at this point in time, we're still open to the idea if the city is open to that too. But then we also thought about how is it going to look in the neighborhood too. And, it's just going to be kind of piecemealed here and there, and our property would stand out from the rest of the properties in the neighborhood. And so I think at this point in time, we're going to withdraw our request to have that concrete curb and gutter.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And so since we've got you online here, did you want to make any additional comments regarding the assessment?
No.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Allison, is there anybody else that wishes to speak regarding the assessment?
So, Madam Mayor, if I may, like I indicated, we have one additional caller that I have not contacted with the last three digits of 535. So since this is a public hearing, I'm going to go ahead and allow this attendee to talk, and if he or she has anything to add to the public hearing here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, caller.
The caller's been on.
Do you have any?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Allison. What?
The caller's on mute, so I'm not sure if they're not able to hear us or if they just don't have anything to add.
Okay.
So 535, last three digits, 535-058 and 200 were the other callers. So
okay.
I think we have it covered, Madam Mayor.
All right. All right. So with that, I'll take it back to council. Council, any questions? So now I'd like to maybe just offer up, and I'm going to keep the public hearing open just for a while, if I can. And with that, Adam, did you want to add or say anything to the council regarding the special assessments?
Madam Mayor,
thank
before we
you.
do that, can we go back to the questions, please?
Okay, sure.
I realize the request for the concrete curb has been withdrawn, but I do want to touch on that a little bit. Do we know what the per linear foot cost would be to do that?
Yeah,
Adam?
Members of the council, Madam Mayor. I don't have it in front of me, but it's about $30 a linear foot is what contractor who we've contracted to do this work bid the concrete curbing at. And I'll just add to that, we have about 375 feet of curb proposed, and that's, you know, not even, that's a very minimal amount of the linear feet of streets. It's just really where we're managing stormwater that we've added some concrete curb. So.
Okay. I do like the idea. I'm not a big fan of bituminous curb it, but I think on future projects, this may be something that we should consider, that if people do want the concrete curb and are willing to pay the upcharge, depending on how it fits in with what other people are doing, this may be something we want to give some consideration to, because I think it's a good idea. And if people are, I understand it's not the case for everyone, but I think it's something we should be considering.
So, Mr. Molitor, are you saying to do it on a per parcel basis or on a project basis?
Per parcel.
Okay, so offer it up, and then they would pay that out of pocket up front, or would they pay it with their assessment? How would that work?
I think they should have the same option, either option.
Okay, all right. Okay, so any other questions of council? Otherwise, Mr. Adam, I'm sorry. Do you want to just kind of run us through the assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a memo item in front of you that kind of summarizes the assessments. And before going through that, I'll just say we're going, just if there's residents listening and wondering about the construction process schedule, those sorts of things, we will be communicating directly with the in-depth newsletter prior to construction starting. And that's going to lay out kind of the anticipated progress, the scope of the work, contacts for you to get in touch with if there's any concerns with the work, and then also a hefty list of frequently asked questions. So look for that. And in the meantime, before that goes out, if you do have specific questions, you can always reach out to myself or Allison. Our information is on the city website. So the item you have in front of you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, is discussing the adopting the assessment for the 2020 street improvement project. So the assessable portion of the project is proposed to be funded by the roads tax levy and the storm sewer fund, and also supported in part by special assessments. And that's why we're here to discuss it tonight. On April 20th, the council ordered the preparation of the proposed assessments and called for this hearing. And the amount declared was declared to be $299,120.03. So the city's existing assessment policy and past practice dictates that the benefiting property owners are assessed 50% of the total street and storm sewer improvement costs. So not assessed for any water main or sewer work improvements. So again, these are for benefiting properties along Lakeview Drive, Margaret Circle, and Shady Lane. And there are two assessment amounts to be considered tonight. One is for HOA properties, and one is for non-HOA properties. The one non-HOA property is the Three Rivers Park District property. And the reason those assessments are slightly different is because the HOA board had requested that the two properties that don't have buildings on them that are owned by the HOA, the assessment for those be distributed amongst the HOA properties. And that's why you see a rate for the HOA properties of $7,882.22 and another rate for non-HOA properties, I should say property, at $7,478. So the as-bid project cost for the assessable portion, which is the street and storm, for this project was $598,240.06, and that sum is proposed to be funded by the roads tax levy, the storm sewer fund, and then half of that would be by the special assessments. The assessments are proposed to be levied for a 20-year period at an interest rate of 3.62%. So the issue to be discussed by the council would just be considering adoption of that assessment.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Does the council have any questions or comments? Anyone? All right. Mr. Baroni and Mr. Beatty, can you weigh in here? Would it be appropriate or legal, or do you see any issues if I were to close the public hearing now? Did you receive any emails or communication of any kind from residents opposing the special assessment?
I'll start before Ron. As far as emails go, I did not. I think anybody that was interested just went ahead and dialed in tonight, and we did hear from Mr. Osmondson, who is the one person that I do know of that had questions about some potential changes, which is, you all heard, he withdrew tonight. So, Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council, I think the issue that the mayor is raising has to do with filing written objections to the assessment. As we know from past practices, the statute requires that in order to preserve your right to appeal an assessment, you must file a written objection with the clerk prior to the hearing or present it to the presiding officer at the hearing. And we've seen that over the years. Some people send their appeals or their notice of objection in early. Some show up at City Hall for the hearing and turn them in. And some sort of get inspiration in the council chambers during the hearing and turn it in there. What I had suggested earlier is that if there was any indication at tonight's hearing that somebody wanted to file an appeal but couldn't because he or she wasn't physically present, that under those circumstances it would probably make sense to continue the public hearing for 2 weeks to give that person an opportunity to do that. There's no reason to do that, though, unless we think there's somebody who wants to file an appeal or file an objection who has not done so, and I haven't heard anybody. So that's a long way to answer. It's
okay.
Certainly up to the council, but I don't see any reason to continue the hearing.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I haven't heard anything from anyone, and I do know during the public meeting and open house that we had, I think we had a $7,500 or $7,800 estimate. So I think we're real close to the original estimate, and it sounded to me like most people, I don't want to speak for them. I'm not speaking for them. I'm just going by what I've heard in the meetings, that they were in favor of the project, and there didn't seem to be objections about the assessment. So anybody else, any other council members have any issue with closing the public hearing at this point? Okay, I'm going to assume that that's a no, so I will then go ahead and close the public hearing now, and I'll take it back to the council. Council, what we need is, yes?
Oh, I was just going to say, just for more the record, my name was in the letter if anyone had any financial questions, and I only got one call from someone on Margaret Circle, and they basically were just asking on the methodology of if it was a per unit or frontage or whatever assessment. So other than that, I didn't get any other calls. So I just wanted to at least, I guess, put that in for the record, I guess. So.
Okay, thank you, Brian. That was Brian Grimm, our finance director. So, yeah, okay. Good point. So with that then, is there a motion to adopt the assessment roll for the 2020 street improvement project? That would be CP 01-20.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, I think Mr. Molitor made that motion and Ms. Mortensen seconded that.
Yes.
So all those in favor signify with aye. Ms. Mortensen?
Aye.
Mr. Molitor?
Yes.
Mr. Trumperlin?
Aye.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
And I vote aye, so motion passes 5-0. So we're looking forward to a successful street project. With that, we'll move on to our business items, and this is approving our professional services agreement for the 2020 street maintenance project. So these are this would be for the overlays that we're thinking of doing. And we talked about that at our last meeting. Ms. Falski, or Ms., is that you?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. As discussed at the last City Council meeting, before the council this evening, is a proposal to prepare a quote package for the 1.5-inch overlay of Game Farm Circle, Retreat Circle, and Sterling Drive. Outlined in the proposal is the proposed schedule to bring back some plans and specifications at the June 15th meeting so that we can get a quote package out, award of contract in July, and then providing a construction timeframe, between July and August so that we can try to garner the best prices and then get a completion in September of this year. We are estimating approximately 1 week for this work, and part-time construction observation is proposed due to the type of work. The fee proposed for both engineering services to prepare the quote package, solicit quotes, answer questions, and administer the contract, including the testing for the bituminous material, is $14,240. And then, as indicated at the council meeting, we had a preliminary cost estimate for the work at $153,000. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the council may have at this time.
Just one question real quick, and then I'll hand it over to the rest of the council. But at our last council meeting, there were some that were listed as a 1-inch overlay and some that were 1.5, and we were looking at doing everything at 1.5, I believe. I think Mr. Molitor brought that up, and I think we agreed. Is the 153 the estimate for the 1.5 on everything?
Yes, I believe it is, because I think we were at 130 something the last time, and just by increasing the price for that street by a 1/2 inch, we got up to that 100, because we were trying to get the quote package estimated around 150,000. So
okay.
we're right at that level.
All right. Does anybody else have questions or comments? Ms. Mortensen, any questions?
No, the question you asked was what I was going to ask as well.
Okay. And Mr. Molitor?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Chumperland?
No questions.
Okay. Ms. Bruce?
No.
All right. So no more questions. So with that, is there a motion to approve the professional service agreement and authorizing preparation of a quote package for the 2020 overlay project for city project number 07-20?
This is Chumperland, so moved.
Okay. And is there a second?
This is Molitor, so moved.
All right. So a motion has been made by Mr. Chumperland and seconded by Mr. Molitor. All those in favor signify with aye. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chumperland?
Yes.
Molitor?
Yes.
Mortensen?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so motion passes 5-0. So that concludes our business items, so we'll move on to our administrative items. We're going to start with staff report. Mr. Baroni, you have a couple of items, or at least one for sure.
Well, looks are deceiving, Mayor. If you look at the packet, it looks like I got one, but I actually have 7 items that I'm going to go through.
Oh, okay.
I know. So I'm going to leave the one that's on there about the Enchanted Island Drive for last, because I just want to rattle off some of these informational items. So 3 things related to calendar. Our next meeting is on Monday, June 1st, which is 2 weeks from tonight, or a week from today. I won't say city offices are closed because they already are, but city employees won't be working on Monday, May 25th in observance of Memorial Day. So just wanted to make sure that is out there. And then, as was discussed a little earlier tonight in the work session, as Mr. Falls alluded to, is that we are required by the state to have a plan for reopening, and we have started that process. And our goal is to try to have that back for a look at our next city council meeting. So that's 3 of them. A couple engineering related things. We did get an email from SEH Engineering, and they said that they're in the process of reviewing shop drawings, and then Tank and Tower, which is the vendor that's going to be doing the work on the site, is in the process of finishing up another project in the next few weeks. And so they are estimating that once we get to June that our project will start. And then we just firmed our schedules up as far as meeting. We're going to have a progress meeting probably mid-month of every month, and that has been scheduled for June for the next, I think, 3 or 4 meetings. That's one engineering public works related thing. The second one is Ms. Fauski forwarded to me an item that came from MnDOT, and this is obviously COVID related. They notified us that there will be a 15% decrease in state aid funding in 2021 for cities and municipalities. That's basically due to the decrease in the gas tax that's being collected, in addition to the motor vehicle sales tax revenues that are down. There's no indication of what's going to happen beyond 2021, but for sure we're getting a 15% decrease in state aid funding in 2021. And then the last item, public safety related, I did have a chance to speak with Greg Peterson, Mountain Fire Chief, and he is going to be working on scheduling a meeting for mid-June to start our discussions with our neighboring cities on a potential fire district. It doesn't have a date yet, and he's going to try to set it up so it could either be an in-person or a Zoom call. I guess we'll just see what happens. But we'll do it. So those are the unprinted items. The final item is the item that I wanted to spend a few minutes of time with. So in your packet, I provided the letter that came from Sherwood City Administrator Greg LaRude, and they are moving forward with final plans and specs to do their section of Enchanted Lane out on their part of the island. So I talked to him last week, and I said, before I reply or give you any direction, I wanted to check in with our city council and find out what, if anything, that our council would like to see addressed as the city of Sherwood moves forward with their construction project. So council, I don't know, Mayor, if you want to negotiate that with our council and let me know.
Yeah. So if you recall, Minnetrista just did the Tuxedo and Enchanted Lane project back in 17, I believe? 17, 18. Okay. And at that time, and prior to even discussing that project, we had contacted Shorewood and said, hey, we're doing this project. How do you feel about doing your road at the same time? There would be efficiencies in dollars and also just less disruption to the neighborhoods and so on and so forth. And at that time, they came back and they said, this isn't even on our 5-year plan. It's way out in the future. We're not interested in participating right now. Well, we get the project done, and then all of a sudden, as you recall, they're like, oh, now we're going to do this road. And they would have done it sooner, except they ran into some glitches because of the Indian burial grounds. And so that kind of delayed it a little bit, but now they're still just a few years after we've completed our brand new road out there. They want to start their construction project. My concern is damaging our road. And so I think we should have some tonnage restrictions for traveling on it. I think we should have an inspection not only done by their engineer, but our engineer at their cost. And we should have detailed pictures. And at the end, if there's some damage done, they should be responsible to repair it to our satisfaction. That's just my thought. Anybody have any thoughts? We'll start with you, Mr. We'll start with Mr. Molitor. Okay, hold on.
I get where you're coming from, but I really think we've got to be careful here because This is a public road. And so obviously, you know, we have limited enforcement ability here. And also, we need to be considerate of the fact that we were in the same spot, not this council, but previous council, when Mound was doing their portion of Tuxedo. And I think we came in after Mound. And so I think what Sherwood's put on the table seems to be reasonable. And so I think while we may not have been happy how it turned out from timing, I think we have to also be reasonable.
Okay, so you're okay with their proposal?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and so we'll go to Mr. Chumperland.
I read through the proposal and it makes sense to me as long as we have input into it. You, Madam Mayor, commented about controlling tonnage. I don't know if that's something that can be done. I would defer to our engineering people to answer that type of question.
Okay, good one, yeah. Ms. Fauski or Ron Beatty or somebody, can one of you weigh in? Would we be able to restrict the weight, or can we do a weight restriction or not?
Madam Mayor, from an engineering standpoint, the structure or the sand, the class 5, the bituminous that's used to build the road based on the material underneath that determines what the maximum tonnage would be allowed on that road. So from an engineering standpoint, there's certainly a limit, but this type of project would not exceed that limit. I will defer to Mr. Beatty if there is a legal stance that the city could take to limit the tonnage on the road.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council. Well, I think it's based on the engineering facts, and if I heard Ms. Fauski correctly, I think what she's saying is the road as constructed, our road as constructed, could take the tonnage that would be expected from their project, and therefore I think we'd have some difficulty in posting the road something less than that, unless we had some other circumstance that we could cite.
Okay, all right. Good points. Good point, John. All right, anybody else? Ms. Bruce?
I was just going to say that it's going to be difficult to even gauge the defects in the, they say they'll fix any defects in the road surface when the defects may be from those heavy trucks might be in the, the subgrade, but I don't think there's anything we could do about that. I think they do say in the letter that they're open to inspection and repair, or that Minnetrista's engineer can participate in the inspection. So I think their letter is fine.
Okay. And obviously we would want our engineer involved in those inspections as well. Ms. Mortensen?
I just want to make sure that the residents that will be affected in Minnetrista are notified of this, because I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a few that will not be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't be very happy.
Right. Is there a letter that could be sent out, again, maybe by the city of Shorewood, although that might not be the best source, but to our residents, informing them of the project, kind of letting them know that they weren't interested 3-4 years ago whenever we did ours. So we, kind of explaining that. I do agree. I think that the residents of Minnetrista deserve an explanation.
Mayor and Council, couple of follow-up points then. So I'm not hearing a lot of blowback on anything added on to what Mr. LaRue stated in his letter. So what I will do is I'll work with Ms. Fauski and we'll determine what the tonnage limit is for that road. And as I put together this response to Mr. LaRue and essentially the Shorewood Council, I think I'd like to restate the tonnage and then just make sure that, as they spec out doing their road, that the whoever vendor they end up selecting doesn't exceed that, we're kind of putting them, if it's a 10-ton road or whatever it is, we'll say, please don't exceed 10 tons. And then,
I doubt it's a 10-ton. Okay,
well,
yes.
Whatever it
idea.
is. Yeah. I couldn't tell you. I'm not an engineer.
Right.
And then the communication piece, Mr. LaRue did say that they would be more than happy to keep our residents in the loop with all their communications. And so we will do our best to provide him with residents that live up and down. I'm sure we have that spreadsheet or whatever it was that was used to tell our own residents when we're doing our own project. So I'm sure we can provide that information to them. So I could certainly provide that. I don't know what else we could do to historically. I think they're all very aware that we did our project in the last few years. And I'm sure you're right that there's probably going to be some blowback from that. They're not going to be all that happy, but it is what it is. I mean, we did ours when we did it, and now they're doing theirs when they want to do it. So it's not ideal, but it is, like I said, it is what it is. So I think as long as they're in communications, I think they would at least be able to plan for things. So.
Okay. Well, again, if you could just reiterate that our residents need to be notified that this project is occurring.
Right.
Unfortunately. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Otherwise, I think that's a good approach, Mr. Baroni. So, all right. Anything else, Mr. Baroni?
No, that's it. I'm sorry to inundate you with 7 items when it looked like it was just one, but that happens.
All right. All right. Next, we have our city engineer, WSB, the contract and agreement. I believe who's going to take that one?
I think Ms. Fauski will.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. As a follow-up to the May 4th meeting where there were 2 professional services agreements that were presented to the council at that time, Council Member Bruce had pointed out that the letter proposals referenced an overall contract to, in addition to these, to the professional services agreements that were brought to the council that evening. And so this item is to follow up on that, to provide council with the background on the overall professional services agreement that's been in effect. It has been in effect since 2012 when there was a public works director component to that. That role was subsequently removed in 2014 when Mr. Peters started as the public works superintendent. So I hope that answers questions as to what the overall professional services agreement mean, what it looks like, and it's simply it's a document that includes, as you can see, numerous things that, in the interest of brevity, we have that overall agreement so that when we bring in a project-specific proposal, it's, depending on the scope of the project, 1 or 2 pages with a summary, and then is supplemented by, in this case, the April 2012 agreement. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Let me ask this, Mr. Baroni and Mr. Beatty, have either one of you or both of you had a chance to review this? Any comments from you on this?
I'll jump in just quickly before Mr. Beatty. He's obviously the legal mind here. So I didn't have any objections, and other than the document being a little messy with kind of taking away the director of public works stuff that was with Mark Erickson back in the day. Other than that, it's pretty standard stuff. So I have no issue with it.
Okay. All right. Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council, I agree with that assessment. This document is dated 2012, but the predecessor document was dated 2005. So really the city has been operating off of essentially the same document since then. I don't remember or have a copy of that original document, but if you see the way this is put together, it really is kind of in 3 parts. The first part is the general conditions. Then there are a number of exhibits which are designed to be modified over time if necessary. For example, the scope of work, that's what changed, for example, when took on the public works work in addition to city engineer. The fee schedule is something that gets changed every year. And so that's the second piece of it. And then, as Allison said, as projects come in, then they have the supplemental agreements, which we see on a regular basis. So, long way of saying, to me, it looks like a pretty standard document.
All right, thank you. Anybody have questions?
This is Shannon Bruce. And
okay,
please take this in the spirit in that it's meant. And this has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of work done by WSB. But I believe there is an inherent conflict of interest in the way Minnetrista contracts with WSB. And it's primarily because the city has no engineering expertise on staff whatsoever. And if it did, this wouldn't be an issue, but it is an issue, and it's a very real issue. And there is no other vendor that the city works with that has so much latitude in proposing projects and choosing vendors and conducting feasibility studies and supervising contracts and overseeing millions and millions of dollars every year without any professional oversight from the city or any competitive bidding on their work. And we are getting to the size with a water tower construction and future water treatment plants coming up in our future, and the size of our road projects, that we need professional engineering expertise on staff, because there's no one on the council that can read a lot of these documents that come across our desks and make heads or tails out of them. And we need our own staff engineer, and that position could be paid for easily by the money that we would save if we required competitive bidding on engineering contracts, which a staff engineer could oversee. And I believe that this is important, and I believe it's the best thing for the city and its residents to have professional oversight over what is arguably the biggest vendor line item in our budget. And it's no reflection on the work that WSB has ever done, and it really doesn't even address their contract, other than it just includes everything, and there's no oversight of it.
Well, tonight we're talking about the contract that you had questioned, and so it doesn't sound like you have questions regarding the contract itself.
Well, I do see that we took back the public works work out of the contract, and it's still there.
Well, and you know what? I thought that too, and I thought, well, maybe we want to remove it. However, thinking about it, not that we're going to do it, but if something ever were to happen, let's say with Gary, then we would be positioned if we wanted to, not that we would have to, but if we wanted to, it's already there, it's already spelled out, we could actually implement it immediately. We don't have to, but that's an option. And removing it can easily be done. But that's, other than that, I don't think that this is pretty much boilerplate contract. And I didn't see any issues with it. Does anybody else have any issues with the contract itself? Mr. Trumperlin, I'll start with you. Okay, Ms. Mortensen, Mr. Molitor?
No.
Okay, and Mr. Trumperlin?
No.
All right. So that was the question at our last meeting. I know we've talked about going out for RFPs before, and that's been discussed on, 3 different occasions, I believe. And we can have that discussion again at some point, but that wasn't on the agenda for this evening. And that's a relatively lengthy discussion. So I don't think we want to go there this evening. With that, we'll move on. Is there any other engineering reports, Ms. Fauski?
No, Madam Mayor, that was all I had this evening.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to council reports. We'll start with Mr. Chumperland.
Nothing to report.
All right, and Ms. Bruce, anything?
Nothing here.
Okay, Mr. Molitor?
Nothing.
And Ms. Mortensen?
Nothing.
All right. I just have a couple of items. One, the Northwest League did meet via Zoom, and we did have a speaker, and he was from the Census Bureau, and just talking about the census. With the COVID-19, there's been a lot of overshadowing of everything else. So in case our residents or anybody has forgotten about the 2020 census, it's really important. It does provide, depending on our population, it provides us with a lot of federal dollars. Not only that, but we could lose, if we don't meet the population requirements, we could lose a representative in the House. So that's also a big consideration. So if you haven't filled it out, I would highly recommend that you do. And I think Minnetrista was at a 72% response rating. I also attended the Zoom meeting for the Gillespie Center. As many organizations, they're not open for business as usual, and they're reassessing their budget and making some changes so that they can meet their meet all of their bills and so on. And the police commission, the police public safety meeting was canceled, and we're looking at possibly maybe sometime, I think, Paul, wasn't that in June or maybe even July?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I believe that's, we thought we'd reevaluate it in June and see maybe we'd do a Zoom meeting or something of that nature, unless we can postpone it
Right,
longer.
okay. Yep. All right. And as Mr. Brony pointed out, we're looking to do a meeting sometime in June with the mayors and administrators from the various cities that would be involved. It would be St. Bonnie, myself, Spring Park, Mound, for a fire commission district. We've been talking about that for many years. And then I just have another question or something to kind of keep in the back of our minds. Since we're going to be getting a 15% decrease for our 2021 MSA dollars, is that a revenue loss to the city that we could recoup through some of the legislation that's being considered? I don't need an answer today, but make a note of it. I've been talking about losses that the city may incur, not just expenses. And if this is something that we can list as a loss, I think it would help our city, especially since we're going to be doing some MSA projects next year as well. I don't have anything else that I can think of. So with that, I will be done.
Mayor?
And yep.
If I may,
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing I should have mentioned before, at a future meeting, perhaps we can talk. A couple meetings ago, we talked about a park shelter in Lyle Park, and I know staff was going to take back some of our discussion, and it would be nice to get an update on that. I'm not sure if we're still planning on executing that this year or not, but if we could just get that on the agenda at some point, I think that might be appropriate.
Yeah, good point. David, could you be able to bring that back at the June 1st meeting or June 15th meeting?
Yeah, Mayor and members of council, we had intended on bringing that to one of our two meetings in May, but we needed some additional information from the vendors that have provided us quotes, and so we've been working with them on getting some updated quotes. Some things were missing and such. We'll recoup. We've been working with them on getting that. We had intended on bringing that forward to you already, just did not have all the information from the vendors. It's been just like everything, it takes a little bit longer right now to get things from them. And so we are intending on bringing that to you, yes, and hope to by the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Also, just another reminder, we had talked about capital improvement purchases, and I'd like to ask staff if you could bring that back to the next council meeting as well. kind of refresh our memories, if you will, but also I think we should be talking about what we will move forward with and maybe what we need to hold off with. So if we could bring that at the June 1st council meeting, the CIP, the capital improvement purchases that we have scheduled. I know, Mr. Molitor, you had mentioned that too at a previous meeting. So anything else? Okay, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. This is Pam.
All right, is there a second?
This is Mike. I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion by Ms. Mortensen and seconded by Mr. Molitor to adjourn. Are there any ones that object? All those in favor then just signify with aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, and we will all reconvene on the 1st of June. Thank you.